They kicked her out of the car dealership like she was worthless. But the next day, her billionaire husband rolled in with a Rolls-Royce. It was a Saturday in mid-October. A light drizzle fell over Seattle, typical weather for that time of year. Margaret Collins, or simply Maggie as her friends called her, parked her aging hybrid near the entrance of one of the city's most prestigious dealerships, Blackstone Luxury Motors. She turned off the engine, checked her hair in the mirror, slipped on a rainproof jacket, and stepped out. She wore simple jeans, a gray sweater, and flat shoes. Nothing flashy. She looked like an average woman, someone easy to overlook in upscale places. But her eyes revealed something else, a quiet confidence that came not from status, but from strength earned through experience. Maggie knew exactly why she was there. Her younger sister had recently finished graduate school, and Maggie wanted to give her a gift, the car of her dreams. Stylish, reliable, with every safety feature. A Mercedes GLC 63 AMG, price tag around $150,000. She walked into the showroom and immediately felt the eyes on her. One of the employees, clearly a senior manager, well-groomed in a tailored suit, wearing a smug smile, gave her a quick glance, then looked away, continuing his conversation with another client. His name tag read, Blake Thompson, Senior Sales Executive. Maggie approached the front desk. "Good morning. I'd like to take a look at the GLC 63 AMG. Is that possible?" The receptionist glanced at her with polite reserve. "Of course. One moment, I'll get the manager." A minute later, Blake appeared. He walked over with that same smirk. "You were asking about the AMG?" he said, glancing her up and down. "It's quite a high-end model. Just to clarify, are you considering a future purchase or just browsing?" "Excuse me?" Maggie asked calmly. "Well, we don't usually offer test drives on this class of vehicle without a deposit. Just being transparent, a $2,000 prepayment is required. I'm sure you understand." His tone was polite, but every word dripped with condescension. "You don't belong here." Maggie didn't react immediately. She just looked him in the eye. "All right, the deposit isn't a problem. I'd like the car in black, red leather interior with a panoramic sunroof. It's a gift for my sister. She's been dreaming about it." Blake clearly didn't believe her. He smirked again. "Unfortunately, we don't offer financing on this segment, but perhaps something more accessible would suit you. We have the GLA, half the price. Still a Mercedes, but more reasonable." Maggie furrowed her brow slightly, but remained composed. "I didn't ask for something cheaper. I came to buy a specific model." Blake lost his patience. He must have decided she was wasting his time. "Look, ma'am." He glanced at her wedding ring, but didn't finish the sentence. "Let's be honest. We usually work with clients who drive up in Rolls-Royces, not 5-year-old Toyota Priuses. If you're here for a nice Instagram picture, this isn't that kind of place. We're a serious business." At that moment, another employee noticed the tension and tried to intervene, but Blake stopped him with a subtle hand gesture. Maggie simply shook her head. "Understood. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Thompson. Don't worry. I won't waste any more of your valuable time." She turned and walked out without another word. Blake stood there, unsure what just happened. Maybe he expected outrage or a scene, but none came. Just calm, quiet dignity. Back in her car, Maggie started the engine, sat silently for a moment, then dialed a number. "Alex, hi. Got a minute?" "Of course. Did everything go okay?" "Not exactly. I just got a reminder of how people judge by appearances. But don't worry. I just thought you might be interested to hear how they treat guests over at Blackstone Luxury Motors. There was a pause on the other end. I'll drop by tomorrow, said the voice of Alexander Collins. I think it's time someone reminded them that dignity isn't about labels. Maggie got home closer to the evening. Their cozy two-story house in Medina wasn't overly luxurious, but everything in it radiated warmth. Wooden beams, soft lighting from the windows, and the smell of cinnamon apple pie baking in the oven. Courtesy of Mrs. Fraser, their longtime housekeeper. Despite the couple's wealth, the house had no trace of showiness. It reflected Maggie's character, simple, orderly, and heartfelt. Alexander Collins was sitting in the living room, browsing a report on his tablet. A routine investment summary, but his thoughts were already elsewhere. When he heard the door open, he looked up and stood to greet her. "Hey, love," he said, kissing her cheek. "Everything okay?" Maggie smiled faintly, removing her jacket. "Not exactly. You were right. People still judge based on appearances." She calmly told him everything, without anger or dramatics. But Alexander knew his wife too well. Behind that calm voice, there was disappointment, not outrage. She'd long since learned not to waste emotions on ignorance, but the kind of deep discouragement that stays with you longer than it should. "He humiliated you?" he asked quietly. "More like erased me on sight, as if I didn't belong. He offered me a cheaper model the moment I said which one I wanted." Alexander began pacing the room, clearly restraining his frustration. "That dealership, Blackstone, they approached me not long ago, asking me to invest in their expansion on the West Coast. 8-figure opportunity. I was seriously considering it. Not anymore. I'm stopping by tomorrow." Maggie raised an eyebrow. "Alex, no drama, just a conversation. This isn't just about you. It's about how they treat people. Today it's you. Tomorrow it's someone else." Later that evening, the house was quiet. Maggie sat near the window, watching the fireplace flicker. She thought about where it all began. 10 years ago, she worked as a special needs educator at a day center for children with disabilities. Back then, she lived in a small apartment, owned one pair of shoes, and tutored in the evenings just to make ends meet. But it was during those humble years that the seed of an idea formed. To create a place where kids with disabilities didn't just get by. They could grow, learn, and thrive at their own pace. The idea wasn't popular. At first, there were no grants, no donors. Until one night, at a local charity dinner, she met Alexander. At the time, he was already known as a tech startup angel investor. But her passion, her vision, they caught his attention. They started collaborating on the project. Not long after, they became a couple. Today, her foundation, Bright Steps Foundation, operated in 8 states, supporting thousands of children and offering jobs and internships to adults with disabilities. Maggie often appeared in medical and nonprofit publications, though she never sought fame. She was recognized more by the impact of her work than by her name or face. She could afford anything now, but she chose to remain true to herself, in the way she dressed, spoke, and treated others. And sometimes, like today, that still worked against her. She sighed and whispered to herself, "Didn't think they'd still be looking at my jeans instead of my eyes." The next morning started quietly. Alexander, true to his word, dressed in a simple blazer, suede shoes, and left for Blackstone. Maggie didn't ask him to, but she knew he would do it in his own way. No shouting, no threats, just precision, and a message they wouldn't forget. She poured herself a cup of coffee and looked out the window. The sky was overcast, but her gaze was calm. Something in her told her this wasn't the end of the story. This was the beginning of something bigger. Not just for one dealership. At 10:27 a.m., a sleek black Maybach pulled up in front of Blackstone Luxury Motors. There was no chauffeur. Alexander Collins was behind the wheel. He stepped out of the car with quiet confidence, tall, composed, wearing a dark blue overcoat over a tailored suit. No security detail, no entourage, but everyone immediately sensed he wasn't an ordinary customer. The receptionist stood up quickly. "Good morning, sir. How can we help you today?" Alexander nodded politely. "I'd like to speak with Blake Thompson, not as a customer, as a person." She hesitated for a moment, then quickly disappeared behind a glass wall. Soon, Blake emerged, without the smug smile this time. His face revealed tension. He had put the pieces together. Now he realized exactly who that woman in the gray sweater had been. "Mr. Collins, good morning. It's truly an honor." "You met my wife yesterday," Alexander said evenly. "Margaret Collins." Silence. A pause. "Yes, of course. We had a brief misunderstanding. I sincerely apologize if—" "You didn't apologize, Blake," Alexander interrupted, calm but firm. "You dismissed her. Not because she said something wrong, but because you decided she didn't look like someone worth your time." Blake dropped his gaze. I didn't realize who she was. I'm sorry." "That's the problem," Alexander replied. "If you had known, you would have treated her differently. But how we treat the people we don't know, that's what shows who we really are." He took a few slow steps toward him. The whole showroom had gone silent. Other staff pretended to work, but were clearly eavesdropping. "I was considering investing in Blackstone Motors' West Coast expansion. We're talking 8 figures. But now, I'm not sure I want to associate with a business that fails to respect basic human dignity." Blake opened his mouth, but Alexander raised a hand slightly, enough to silence him. "And yet, I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here with an offer. Because my wife isn't someone who seeks revenge. She believes in people, even the ones who make mistakes." Alexander pulled out a business card and handed it to him. "This is Bright Steps Foundation. We're launching a partnership program with private companies, internships, employment, and adaptive training for young adults with disabilities. We need real-world partners, real businesses, places where they'll feel seen and valued." Blake accepted the card, visibly unsettled. "You want us to be part of this?" "I want you to try," Alexander replied. "Because that's the only way you'll understand what you missed yesterday. Behind every wheelchair, every speech delay, every sweater and pair of jeans, there's a person. And their worth isn't defined by how they look or what's in their bank account." He locked eyes with him for a moment. "You're not being forced. The decision is yours. But if you say no, I'll let my wife know. And that will be the end of it." Alexander offered a small, firm smile. Not aggressive, but unshakable. "You have a week. I'll wait for your answer." He turned around and walked out, leaving Blake standing in the middle of the showroom, motionless. No one said a word. Back in his office, Blake shut the door, sat down, and stared at the business card. Bright Steps Foundation. Changing futures with dignity. He was angry at himself, at the situation, at how quickly things had spiraled, and somewhere deep inside, something else stirred. This wasn't about PR. It wasn't about saving face. It was a chance. Not to fix his image, but to fix his perspective. To see people. Blake barely slept that night. He had spent the evening Googling Margaret Collins and then Bright Steps Foundation. With each article he read, his discomfort deepened into shame. He read about inclusive education programs in schools, mobile labs for kids with cerebral palsy, scholarships for students with autism. There were photos too. Smiling teens, volunteers, instructors, and Maggie herself, wearing the same kinds of sweaters and jeans. But now he saw her differently. And every time he looked at a picture, he remembered. He tried to sell her a cheaper car. On Monday morning, he sent an email to the foundation. No corporate lingo, no PR polish, just honest words. Good morning, my name is Blake Thompson. I was the person who made a serious mistake. I'd like to see how your foundation works. Not for appearances. For myself. If you're open to it, I'm ready to take part. Blake, the reply came that same day from one of the program coordinators. Polite, neutral, no hidden jab. Hello, Blake. Thank you for reaching out. We welcome anyone who is willing to learn and take part. We'd be glad to have you join our center for a short internship next week. Address and details attached. Sincerely, Nicole Jansen Bright Steps Foundation. 4 days later, Blake stood in front of the foundation's center in Redmond. This wasn't a dealership. No marble floors. Just a clean, modest building with green-framed windows and a sign that read, Bright Steps. Every step matters. Nicole, a woman in her 30s with a clear but kind gaze, greeted him at reception. She walked him inside. You'll be working with the adaptive training group, she said. 4 participants, different diagnoses, varying communication levels. Your job isn't to lead, it's to assist, observe, and support. You're not a coach, you're backup. He nodded. The first day felt like entering another world. At first, it was awkward. One participant, a 17-year-old named Eddie on the autism spectrum, didn't make eye contact and kept repeating the phrase, "Black cars are faster than white ones." A girl named Carly, in a wheelchair, asked for help with her laptop, but firmly added, "Don't baby me. My spine's damaged, not my brain. I'm an engineer in the making." Blake laughed, genuinely, for the first time in a while. Days passed quickly. He carried boxes, helped with presentations, printed worksheets. With each day, he stopped noticing diagnoses and started seeing people. By Wednesday evening, he stayed late helping Carly build a PowerPoint deck. She glanced at him and asked, "So, who are you really?" "Right now," he smirked. "Someone trying to become a better human." She nodded. Cool. Everyone starts somewhere. On the 5th day, he unexpectedly came face to face with Margaret. She walked into the classroom to congratulate that week's graduating trainees. Applause broke out. Some came to hug her. She spotted Blake almost immediately, but said nothing. Just smiled. Warmly. Honestly. With no trace of bitterness. After the small ceremony, Blake approached her. "Mrs. Collins. Maggie." She looked at him, her expression open. "I'm listening. I was wrong, not just in what I said, but in how I thought. I looked at you and didn't see a person, just a stereotype. I judged your worth by your clothes and your car. I didn't know who you were. But now I understand it wouldn't have mattered even if you were no one important. I should have respected you regardless." Maggie was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I didn't get angry at you, Blake. I just saw someone tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of climbing. People hide behind suits and job titles when they're not sure who they really are. I'm sorry you lived under that kind of pressure, but I'm glad you stepped out of it." She smiled, not politely, genuinely. "And thank you for staying in the program. Some of our kids now look at you and believe the world can be just a little bit kinder." He nodded, unable to say anything more. A few days later, the foundation received an official proposal. Blackstone Luxury Motors wanted to become a long-term partner in the Employment and Adaptation Initiative, not as PR, as part of their company culture. At the first internal presentation, Blake stood in front of the team. "I won't talk for long," he began. "I'm someone who once failed to see the value in a person, and because of that, I started seeing it in everyone." He paused. "Today, I'm not wearing a suit, and I'm not standing here as a senior sales executive. I'm just someone trying to be better. Thank you for giving me the chance." There was applause in the room. No standing ovation. No flashbulbs. Just sincere appreciation. Maggie watched from the back. She didn't need the spotlight. She was content knowing that one moment of dismissal had turned into someone else's awakening. Later, at a private donor event, someone asked her, "Why didn't you just have him fired?" She answered calmly, "Firing doesn't teach anything, but seeing yourself clearly, that does. And if someone's willing to look, they can change. Sometimes they even change others along the way." This story of Maggie, Alexander, and Blake wasn't about wealth, power, or revenge. It was about human dignity, about the fact that everyone deserves to be seen, heard, understood, and that even the narrowest mindset can learn to open its eyes.